Between the commercial success of movies like Pixar's Inside Out 2, Illumination's Despicable Me 4, and Disney's Moana 2, as well as the critical success of properties like DreamWorks' The Wild Robot, you would be forgiven for saying that actually 2024 was the year of animation in a sense. But there is of course a lot more nuance to that, so let's have a little bit of a debrief on the state of animation right now, as I thought it would be a good time to look at how the industry is doing, sum up the news from the year, and try and see maybe what 2025 might bring with it. If you were to extrapolate the trends, let's talk first about the commercial successes. It has been an absolute barnstormer for animation. At the time of writing this, 4 out of the 10 highest grossing movies of the year are all animated. Of those 4, we even have the #1 spot with Inside Out 2 amassing nearly $1.7 billion at the box office this summer. Add up those top 4, and employing a little bit of guesswork, we're looking at a global $4 to $5 billion worldwide on just about 4 movies. That is some insane cash. Critically, the field has been going from strength to strength as well. The Wild Robot debuted to overwhelming praise, myself including amongst those ranks. Arcane Season 2, whilst being a little patchy in places, is still a fantastic watch, and of course there's the return of Wallace and Gromit as well. It seems we couldn't go higher, so inevitably, the question comes, where do we go from here? Well, to be honest with you, I'm actually a little bit worried. There's no major release that I can see that is absolutely guaranteed to light the world on fire this time around. In fact, most of the movies being released by the major studios next year, I'm actually quite skeptical of. Disney is offering a live-action adaptation of Snow White, marred with ethics and animation that could be described as dodgy at best, and a Pixar original which doesn't seem to have all that much hype behind it either. Sure, they've got some streaming releases, which I'm cautiously optimistic for. And to be fair, Dream Productions surprised me recently, but there's no tentpole release. Coupled with that, Disney's ethics. Talking about Inside Out, it was reported that a large portion of the staff for Inside Out 2 were unceremoniously let go after the film wrapped production, and that's just some dodgy dealings on Disney's part, trying to cut the cost. And it's a trend, with DreamWorks as well culling their in-house studios, as well as Sony and Spider-Verse a couple years ago, also making movies breaking the backs of their animators. On the Disney front, they've got the top movies of 2024, and this is what they do? In an industry that's already struggling to recruit new talent, why would you employ a business practice like this? And talking of Moana 2, it is also slightly concerning that this movie has been so successful, given the average critical review and the fact that it was originally a cheaper version being made for Disney Plus and then transitioned into a cinema release. That's just sending all the wrong messages to Disney and from Disney. It's telling them that people will go and see their flagship IPs regardless of quality. It's not just that Moana did gangbusters in its first week, it's continuing to hold incredibly well. So, no doubt, Disney will look at this and see what else they can make $1 million off of on a TV budget. Over the road, DreamWorks have had a similarly incredibly successful year. Between Kung Fu Panda 4's commercial success and The Wild Robot's overwhelming critical and moderate commercial success, you'd think they'd double down on their own content, right? No. DreamWorks have announced they're outsourcing all animation to third-party studios. The Wild Robot is the last in-house production for Disney's main competitor, and the end of an era is upon us. In its place, the studio will be serving as predominantly a distributor, or moving ahead with a new mixed production model, which has very little information about it out there at the moment. Once again, after a fantastic fiscal year, the studio is deciding to just let go of the majority of its staff. We can only assume to pocket the money. Of the 3 movies on DreamWorks' animated next year's slate, 2 are completely third-party made, those being Dogman and the Bad Guys sequel. So in a year where animation seems to have taken the forefront, corporate greed seems to be winning out overall. On top of that, industry morale as a whole has been at an all-time low. Talks of overworking, underpaying, and even more are reaching a fever pitch. Hey there, thank you for making it halfway through this video. Come along and subscribe if you're interested in more videos like this, and tell us your thoughts down below. Alright, back to it. It seems that we're not that far away from an animation union forming and striking for better working conditions, and honestly, I don't blame them, and I don't think many people would. Too many pass off the long hours and antisocial lives you have to lead in a creative job to stay afloat and relevant, because of the glitz and glamour associated with it. But at the end of the day, it is a job. You should be able to go home, see your family, and enjoy time away from the office, not have to suffer for your own or more likely someone else's art for a fraction of the reward. The most talked about example of this probably belongs to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. A moderate success a couple years back, Across the Spider-Verse was reportedly plagued with producer interference. According to one member of the team, over 100 members had left the film by the time production was completed, and those who stayed were pushed to do 7 days a week of often 11 hours a day, according to an article from The Verge. At one point, production ground to a halt for 3 months whilst a round of changes were made, with employees just waiting for all the notes to come back down the pipeline. It just sounds like a lack of awareness on the producer's part as to how long the animation process takes, particularly on the point of Lord and Miller, who have a successful live-action background. On top of that, Sony boldly announced that the sequel Beyond the Spider-Verse would release in March of 2025, before moving towards the end of the year, before falling off the release schedule entirely. And now, who knows when it will be released, and if the interest is even still there. We as the audience took it on good faith that they were working on both films simultaneously to meet these release dates, but reports from cast and crew seem to indicate that voice work has only started recently, so it really is anyone's guess when the film will come out, if at all. But it's not all doom and gloom. The Oscars are approaching, and indie animation is there to light the way. Flow, an indie project, is leading a promising box office charge in the computer animated field, and with a box office release showing at least some interest in the film, it's good to see people taking a chance on a smaller movie and something a little bit more artsy as well, less crazy corporate. Along with that, we have, of course, Aardman re-entering the fray with the new, well-received Wallace and Gromit entries, a return to form for the Bristol-based stop-motion company after a slight disappointment with the new Chicken Run. And talking of stop motion, Leica has its biggest release in a while at some point with Wildwood, so he is hoping those guys can bring forth something that captures the people as much as Coraline did. In other forms of indie, we also have the likes of Netflix's collaboration with the Amazing Digital Circus, which seems to be one of the biggest projects of the year, at least on the internet side of things, that could very well open the doors for more smaller, individualistic studios coming out after the corporate greed just taking over the more larger standard industry. And if greed isn't enough, there is of course also the new plague of AI sweeping in. We covered it earlier in the year talking about the Christmas Coca-Cola advert that was ruined fully by AI, but also there are multiple brands that have made full commercials entirely out of generative AI. A vague, not even a video game, probably some sort of AI scam got into the Game Awards recently with Catly, and of course there are people gunning to make fully AI-generated movies as well. At a time when workers are already being crushed by the corporate greed, to see generative content replacing their work entirely, whether successfully or not, most likely not, it really is both a golden age and a disaster right now for animation, with indies having some great hits, the big guys having big successes and low morale, and then this new wave that's absolutely not going away for how cheap it is. Where is animation going? Honestly, every direction all at once. At this point, it's a matter of just picking your sides, and either one, I'm very much on the sides of any workers struggling who wish to go on strike, and hopefully they can soon in some sort of union, as well as any indie productions that can dodge any and all of the negatives as much as they can. 2025 will be an interesting year to see where we are in 12 months' time, but no matter what form it takes, hopefully the drive and soul within the animators will still live on in some form. But for now, that's all I've got to say on this little mini episode. My name's been Daz. Thank you very much for reaching the end of this video, and I shall see you all in a little bit.